So if I could have Kelly and Jocelyn come up and join me for just a moment. Would you please welcome them as they come forward? Jocelyn Hittle runs our Denver operations for Colorado State University, which means that when you have a question about the National Western Center, I usually say, call Jocelyn, because she knows what it is. You know, Jocelyn's the director of those operations and is working primarily focused on the National Western Center, but there's actually a pretty large portfolio of things that you help manage on the CSU side. She has provided us with opportunities to think very concretely about what can be CSU's role in spawning innovation at the National Western Center. She comes to it from a place that not only understands business and business models, but also from very high-level thinking around sustainability. We've had great conversations about that, Jocelyn, and the role that the university can play in that in the National Western Center. To Jocelyn's left is Kelly Leid. Kelly has 22 years of experience around operations of really big projects. You know, Kelly, when I talk to you about some of the big projects you've taken on, they've included things like brand new football stadiums. Denver Broncos, Arizona Cardinals, brand new stadiums there, which are long, complex projects. But then as a Colorado native, really third generation Colorado native, somebody from Aurora, you got the opportunity to start working in the Denver mayor's office and take on some really large projects. So your role now is working in Mayor Hancock's office. And in 2016, you had the opportunity to be the executive director of the mayor's office for the National Western Center, which means you worry about transportation, you worry about infrastructure, you worry about picking up real estate, and then probably most importantly now and how you work with Jocelyn is around the programs that are going to take place at the National Western Center. So I think we've got a lot to learn, a lot to know about what's going on there and the great opportunities that are there. So what I'd like to do is just turn it over to you to talk a little bit about what's going on at the National Western Center.
Great. All right, good morning. Oh, let's try that a little again. Good morning. All right. It is a great honor to be here today and to talk about the progress we have made over the last 4 years. And I'm reminded of about a year ago, the city, through our Office of Economic Development, had put out a report on Next Generation Ag and really built on the work that CSU's been doing around AgInnovation clusters. And, you know, after kind of a long morning, the mayor came up and made a really kind of a clear statement about, you know, and he used the analogy of the space race and what America did to really change the world around our exploration of space. And then he jumped to where we sit today with the challenges we face around climate change and growing population, global population, and densification of our urban centers, and that how are we going to ultimately feed all these people. And his punchline was pretty clear. He said, you know, we in Denver and Colorado and the Rocky Mountain West have an opportunity to seize this moment. We can be the ones that harness this possibility of solving the world's global food issues. So why not now? Why not Denver? And why not the National Western Center? So with that, I'm going to kind of ground you in the project and our work to get you kind of oriented. And then Jocelyn's going to talk about not just the collaboration that's going among the partners, Colorado State University, Western Stock Show Association, the city, but this growing list of partners and programs and ideas that will emerge at this very special place. So let's get you oriented first. How many have been to the National Western Stock Show? Okay. How many of you feel like, you know, it's celebrating its 112th year. How many feel like the site feels 112 years old? Okay, so it's time for a bit of a facelift, and we're going to do a complete reconstruction. But let's get you oriented. So, you know, as a guy that loves real estate and does development, you couldn't ask for a better location for a center or a campus like this. So it's right along I-70, just east of I-25, and sits at the intersection of Brighton Boulevard and I-70, about 20 minutes from the airport, about 10 to 12 minutes from downtown, from the Capitol. a nice, you can skip on the road and on I-25 and head up here to Fort Collins. But it's centrally located to our major infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. And, again, as a native, we always joked about sneaking into Denver, into downtown from the airport via Brighton Boulevard through our back door. And again, if you've spent any time in that part of the city, it feels like the back door. It's got a long history of really Colorado or Denver's industrial corridor. It still feels very much like that. And if you've spent any time there recently, it's obviously being transformed our eyes. But the National Western Center is going to become the new front door into downtown. And Brighton Boulevard through River North, or Rhino as we like to call it, is changing before our very eyes. So this will be at this nexus of our transit infrastructure heading into the Front Range, into downtown, and couldn't be better situated. Now, you can't do projects like this that are at this scale or this complexity without a whole range of partners. And in the summer of 2013, 5 founding partners came together, they're listed here, to embark upon a journey. And we literally, the way I like to describe it, we signed a non-binding MOU, or translated simply, we shook hands. And we agreed that we were going to partner together. The mayor had laid out some pretty bold objectives about keeping the stock show in Denver, coming up with a 100-year solution, but really turning this whole premise of this historic place and this historic asset called the stock show on its head, and thinking differently about how do we leverage this heritage, this place, this experience in a different way. And so these 5 partners came together and we started talking about what that might mean and what that could be. And over the course of time, in 2015, we signed a term sheet, the 3 equity partners, which of these 5 are Colorado State University, Western Stock Show Association, and the city, that further clarified our partnership, still non-binding, so it was a firmer handshake. But further clarified our partnership and really started to put in motion what this project could be. And then 2015 was a magical year. The state legislature approved House Bill 1344 to fund the 3 CSU facilities on a bipartisan effort. The citizens of Denver overwhelmingly approved Measure 2C that funds a large portion of this project from the city. And then the State Regional Tourism Act was approved, the largest award of the 6, that really put in motion almost $1 billion of funding or resources that we could have access to make this thing a reality. So let's now start to kind of move into just, again, the groundwork of the project. And one of the things that was really important during this journey from 2014 to 2015 was the development of a master plan. And you would typically think, again, as a developer, that, well, we're going to jump right into the physical place, right? What's it going to look like? But we actually started with a set of guiding principles. And these principles are outlined here, and I'll let you read them. But it was critically important to us that this was a principally based, focused exercise, that we would constantly go back to these principles and think about how are we pushing ourselves in a way that most developments may not. How are we creating aspirational goals, challenging ourselves to think differently about the opportunity before us. And so literally every day, these are posted in what we call our war room, which is our big project room, and we're reminded each day as partners about our obligations, and in particular to the 3 local communities, Global Area Swansea, which are neighborhoods around this site that have historically been disadvantaged, and how are we meeting our objectives as partners. One of the other things that we did is, all the 3 equity partners have their own visions and missions, but we wanted to be clear that the National Western Center was something new, something different, and that we were going to create a shared vision and mission. So we went through a facilitated conversation a summer ago, and this is our shared vision to become the global destination for agricultural heritage and innovation. This idea of 2 sides of the same coin. One, reflecting the importance of making sure future generations understood and appreciated our heritage. Where did we come from? What are our roots? While at the same time turning pretty quickly to the future and the journey ahead of how we're going to collectively solve these really challenging issues in front of us. And what's interesting, especially interesting, as we looked across the United States and across the country and across the globe of what were is there a place like this we're about to create? And the answer is we can't find one. But this unique convergence of economic development, tourism, entertainment, education, and the arts, all in one location, all dedicated to this idea of how do we again solve and bring together the best minds around the planet to have these really challenging conversations. This safe place where we can talk about tough things is the goal. And so now you're going to start to see over the course of this year and next us moving those ideas, those words into action and into a physical place. So now let's kind of, again, if you followed the project at all, this is a picture of the master plan. And the campus today, the complex today, which is made up predominantly of what the stock show owns and what the city owns, is about 130 acres. The red boundaries that you see here, we're going to grow the site to 250 acres. It's almost doubling it in size. We have been acquiring land since April of last year, and we are about 76% complete in that exercise. By the end of this year, we will have most of the properties under our control, the city's control, to make sure we can fulfill the development. Again, most of the funding, or a lot of the funding, is in place for phases 1 and 2, which impact over 80% of the site. We're very focused again on honoring this site for future generations and telling the story. In fact, one of the themes that is really true of millennials today and others is this: we're all yearning for these very authentic experiences. And it doesn't get much more authentic than the National Western Stock Show. And so making sure we preserve that, again, while at the same time thinking about the future. We will be building or redeveloping about almost 3 million square feet of space on the campus. The majority of the campus buildings get demolished and replaced. There are some historic buildings that we will restore and be using. But it's essentially a complete rebuild of the site with, year-round facilities that allow us to move well beyond those 16 days a year for year-round programming across a broad spectrum of events and event types. Again, year-round expectations of events. This idea, and this is a central theme that I would love to hear your ideas on because it's really important, is this idea that we want to create this bridge between rural and urban interests. How do we create, again, this place where people can come and have these conversations? So we will be doing a road show, I would guess, over the next year or two as we start placemaking and talking to rural communities in particular about what does it mean, what would it mean to you to have this place, this bridge where you can come and learn and grow and experience and talk and solve challenges. And how do we translate that as builders into a place that folks feel comfortable coming to? And then, obviously we don't do this without thinking about the bottom line, and our projections are, and I think this is conservative, over the next 36 years, we're looking at about a return on investment of $7 billion, based upon roughly $1 billion investment. And that's just on the site itself. That does not count the jobs that will be created in and around this campus, which we're equally excited about as the campus comes online. So this gets a little closer picture of the campus. The dots and the numbers represent the first 2 phases of the project. We will actually be celebrating, and we invite all of you to come to an event on November 11th where we will be having Demo Day. If you've watched the home shows, improvement shows, Demo Day is a kind of a fun thing. We're going to have a Demo Day and tear down a building to kick this thing off. And then after next year's stock show, we will actually start physical improvements to the site, and we will continue till we finish. But these dots and colors represent what we will be building over the next 7 years or so to bring this campus online. One of the things that, and I've referenced this in a variety of ways, but I want to be very specific, is being true to our responsibility as stewards of the past. And this is one of a handful of historic buildings on the site. This was actually the Armour Meatpacking Facilities Administrative Building. We just acquired it. It is a beautiful old building. It's the center of what will become the new stockyards, but we are very committed to restoring this building to its luster and making sure that, again, future generations can enjoy this building and others on the campus and tell the story of this place that's pretty special. The next 2 slides just really give you a sense of our construction. We have hired, we have a team of about 20 now through the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. CH2 was hired as our program management team. They are embedded within the city's team. And our sole purpose is to act as the city's owner's representative to overseeing the design and construction of the site. So what you're seeing here is our first phase of work, which is really building the new stockyards, which will replace the existing yards. It will be a year-round place for year-round events. So today, where the yards are permanent, these will be temporary pens for the stock show, and then we have a 20-plus acre festival space for year-round programming on the site. And then phase 2, once we open the new yards, we will be able to now build the new livestock and equestrian center, which are about 1 million square feet of really large barns, again, for year-round use. We think the site is uniquely positioned not only to help the stock show grow, but also to do year-round programming, and especially around equestrian-related events. We think Denver and Colorado is uniquely positioned to attract a lot of equestrian events from around the country, and some of the largest shows in the world will come to the site. But again, thinking about year-round programming, everything from high school sports and beyond will be at these buildings. So what I've just showed you between those two slides is probably about 6 or 7 years of work before us. And the good thing about this project is most of our risk is front-loaded, meaning once we get the site ready for development, the buildings will be the easiest thing we do. So the next several years will be about getting the site ready for development, pad-ready development, pad-ready sites, so that we can start construction. So we have some quite a bit of work ahead of us, but at the end of the day, I'm feeling very confident. In fact, on Monday, we're going to City Council to take our framework agreement, which binds the 3 equity partners together in a legal way, commits resources to start this project, and I'm excited about the journey ahead. But I hope you'll join us in this discussion. I hope you will be a part of this amazing journey ahead of us and help us truly make Colorado the Silicon Valley of agriculture. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jocelyn to talk about CSU's role.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning. So first, I just want to say thanks to the Laurie Student Center staff and conference services for a lovely breakfast. Let's give them a hand for that. Making sure you're all well-fed and well-caffeinated. Please feel free to get up and get more coffee. I won't take it personally if you do that. So again, my name is Jocelyn Hittle. I'm Director of Denver Program Development for CSU. And I just wanted to take a moment to share with you all that I'm actually 4th gen CSU in some way or another. So my great-grandfather was a chemistry teacher here. My grandparents are alums. In fact, my grandfather was an agronomist and an alum from the College of Ag. And my father was also a professor. So this is a really great opportunity for me, and I feel a little bit like coming back to CSU and working on the National Western Center project is a little bit like coming home. Of course, there are some pros and cons to this history, to having this connection, this 4th gen connection. My sister once got asked out on a lunch date with someone when she was here in Fort Collins over the summer, and she didn't really want to go out with this guy, and he was talking about the other classes that he'd been taking, and she said, oh, what did you take last semester? And he said, thermodynamics, which is a class my father taught, and she said, okay, well, who was your professor? And he said, Hittle. I hated him. Which is, that's highly possible that any given student is going to love or hate any given professor, I suppose, but that really gave her a nice out. She said, well, that's my dad, and that was the end of that date. But I mention this not just to say, hey, I have some CSU street cred, but also to talk a little bit for a second before we get into more detail on the National Western Center about some of the things that you heard from President Frank yesterday. And what he was talking about was sort of how does the National Western Center, how would a kid who comes to the National Western Center, how would that shape their life? How would they, if they saw, the cow with a hole in its side or a horse on an underwater treadmill, how would that change the trajectory? How would it help them think about a new career in STEM or in ag that they hadn't really considered for themselves before? And just speaking from personal experience, growing up here in Fort Collins and having that familial connection with a university, some of the things that afforded me were, when I was in the 6th grade, I came and did an independent study with a professor in the College of Ag where I dissected a bunch of Brassica gentiana flowers, and I don't remember why, I'm sorry, even though I know all of you are surprised because I'm sure you think it was really not that long ago that I was in the 6th grade. Thank you very much. But I don't remember what it was about, but what I do remember was sort of the scientific method and that introduction to how we do research, and that what I was doing with that professor was something new that nobody had done before. And then as time went on, I decided I was going to be a veterinarian, and I worked at the CSU vet hospital. I worked out at ARBL with George Seidel, who's at the forefront of research on cloning and on in vitro fertilization in large animals. And this was an incredible opportunity for me. And what really gets me excited is the opportunity to take some of what Fort Collins offers on that front down to Denver, where we can expose a whole new population of kids to this connection to what CSU has, to the best-in-class research that our professors are doing, to the outreach and the extension work that is happening not only here but across the state. So as we think about the National Western Center, what gets me excited is being able to take that opportunity that I myself experienced and offer it up to thousands of kids in the Denver metro area and from around the state who might then see that shift in their career trajectory that President Frank was talking about yesterday. So with that, I'm going to dive in a little bit. This is actually a picture of my grandmother's dugout in Gillette, outside of Gillette, Wyoming. And that's my grandmother on the left on that horse. And the reason I show you this is to really drive home one of the points that Secretary Vilsack made yesterday, which is that my grandparents were farmers and ranchers. And many people in their generation were farmers and ranchers. That is decreasingly true over time, right? As farming gets consolidated and ranching gets consolidated, there are fewer farmers and ranchers. And the connection that we all have to farming and ranching, as new generations are born, their connection becomes more tenuous. And what they really need in order to understand that, again, is some of what we are hoping to be able to do at the National Western, where we can tell the story of farming and ranching and really make that urban-rural connection and make that connection to history and heritage of farming and ranching. So, and my grandmother in that picture, I think, was about to be told that she was not allowed to ride to Devil's Tower because she was a girl, which she remained ticked off about until her mid-90s. So, and it's not just about this storytelling, but it's also about the economic piece, right? And this number comes from a 2012 study that came out of CSU about agricultural's impact on the state economy. So we're really thinking about it from a lot of different perspectives. This wonderful historical and cultural legacy, but also what's the business perspective. And this is a slide that emphasizes that, and I think many of you might be familiar with. It came out of a AgInnovation value chain study that came out of CSU in 2014, and the authors of this study, I think, are probably here. Is Greg Graff around? Yep, there he is over there. Excuse me. So this just highlights a little bit what Kelly was talking about, the Silicon Valley of the West notion. So on the left, you see publications that are within the food systems value chain, and the right, you see patents. And so you can see that even if you are looking just at patents and not so much that big green bubble around CSU up in Fort Collins, but the bubbles sort of spread out along the Front Range, that there's a lot of activity. And this is just observing what is, right? This isn't even starting to try to generate new patents and new businesses and new entrepreneurship. This was just understanding what already exists. This is the organic development of ag entrepreneurship that's already happening in this area. So how wonderful that the National Western can sit right in the middle of all of this activity. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk a bit more specifically about what CSU is doing. And again, just trying to keep in mind that notion that we're thinking about how do we introduce kids to new technology, to new careers that they might not have thought about for themselves. How do we take all the excellent research that's coming out of CSU, all of our different campuses, not just Fort Collins, and bring that to them? And really, we're thinking about 5 themes in general when we're thinking about how we do that. So food systems, that's a big one. That makes a lot of sense given the National Western's context and where CSU has a lot of strength. But also how food systems intersects with water, energy, health, and the environment. And all 5 of those really sit in this historic and cultural context at the National Western Center. So there are 3 facilities that we are currently planning that will help us achieve that mission. The first one is a Water Resources Center, and this is a partnership with Denver Water, which is the Denver Metro's water utility. It is a great opportunity for us to partner with a water utility, but also bring in ag partners so that we can think about, and recreation partners, so that we can think about sort of water in the state of Colorado writ large. And how do we as a community help to implement the state water plan? And how can we use innovation, research, policy, and education to further the conversations around water? And this hits on something that I also heard yesterday from a number of different speakers, which is that we need to have honest conversations. And water is one of those places where honest conversations in the state of Colorado are particularly important. And having a neutral location for people to come together and have those conversations is also really important. And it's a great role for CSU to play. We are seen as credible and neutral, and so what a good opportunity for us to bring people to the table to really have those honest conversations and help to implement the state water plan and get us to where we need to be. So that will be the kind of thing that's happening there at that Water Resources Center. This is a little rendering from the master plan before Denver Water became our partner. So imagine that building 10 times larger, and that will be about what it will be. So it's a great opportunity for some visibility around all the great work that CSU is doing around water already. Within that facility, because it will be our first facility out of the ground, and because it has a focus on water innovation already, and because we really want to start to introduce these themes around innovation and agricultural innovation and entrepreneurship, it will also house, at least temporarily, our AgInnovation Center. So the idea behind this AgInnovation Center, and there are folks here in the room who have conceived of this notion, is really to sort of take our existing Ag Experiment Station model and to add one more Ag Experiment Station that has an urban location. So our Ag Experiment Stations across the state have different focuses based on where they are and what research is needed in those areas. What would an urban Ag Experiment Station look like, and what kinds of research questions would we answer there? So that urban Ag Experiment Station would be part of this Ag Innovation Center, but the other two parts would include a business accelerator and incubator. So how do we help foster new entrepreneurs who are working on solving problems in the food systems value chain? And also, how do we provide robust educational programs? And those are all linked. So for example, we could have badging and credentialing and certificate programs for professionals who are already working in the food system. And we could also have master students in ag entrepreneurship who are working on business models and plans with those entrepreneurs or with larger companies and are really getting that business experience and are helping to launch new ventures from this facility. So really exciting, lots of opportunities for connection with the private sector. And those of you who are in the room today, please do come and talk to us about what this might look like from your perspective and how it could be valuable for you, because really the notion here is for that to be as collaborative as possible. Our second facility is focused on animal health, so it is an equine sports medicine clinic, so that will be sports medicine treatment for equine athletes that are competing there at the National Western Complex throughout the year, as well as a small animal clinic that will be run in partnership with Pet Aid and will provide donor-subsidized care to low-income families. And that'll be sort of at the north end of that rendering that you see there. And then lastly, the CSU Center, which is it's further out in terms of scheduling, so we still have a lot of room to think about exactly what happens in that building. But the concept for this facility is that it is a place where people can come and learn about where their food comes from, what the latest in technology is around food systems and agriculture. So this, I think, is a really important space for us to talk about, again, from the perspective of the storytelling that is so important for many of you who work in the food system and farming and ranching. A lot of what we have heard from our ag industry partners is we need a place to tell our story. We need a place where people who are coming through to the stock show, particularly the folks who who only come to the stock show, they come once a year, it's their chance to connect with sort of the cowtown roots of Denver, but they really are not that connected with food and food systems the rest of the year. How do we ensure that when they are there, during the stock show that we are really doing a great job of telling the story of what 21st century agriculture is. How we talk about self-driving tractors and drones and sensors and genetic modification. What does that all mean? And how can we ensure that people truly understand what the food system is really like today? Not only because it allows us to get kids excited about those careers, I'll say that one more time, but also because it helps people understand how, as consumers, to be better informed. So this will also be a place where our extension programs can run all kinds of different activities, 4-H and all of the programs that are already working so well down in Denver. So this is just a concept of what the interior of that building might look like with different sort of learning gardens and spaces like that. Again, that building is a number of years down the road, so we are looking for feedback on what would be most useful to those of you in the industry when it comes to the messaging in that building. So the last thing I'll mention is something that James alluded to, which is the sustainability features of this site. So with the help of the Institute for the Built Environment here at CSU, which is a great group of folks who think really critically and hard about how we should be building our new facilities and buildings and grounds, and they really are forward thinking. They have been helping us think through what the National Western Center should look like, and how do we take CSU Fort Collins, which is the only platinum, actually one of 2 platinum rated campuses when it comes to sustainability. Stanford just caught up with us. How do we take that commitment to sustainability down to the National Western? So they really encouraged us to think about regeneration and not just sustainability. So the sort of joke that we tend to use to help people understand what that means is, if I said to you, hey, how's your marriage? And you said sustainable, that would sound a little bit depressing. So the idea is that we want a site that's not only sustainable, but regenerates you. If you're married, if you go home and your partner makes you have more energy and helps your life be better, this is kind of the parallel we're looking for here, right? That you come to the National Western and it's healthier than it was, and it helps you be healthier, that it generates more energy than it uses, that it's really thoughtful about how we use water, and it educates people about how to use water and how to conserve water. So we're really thinking hard about this. It's a 250-acre site. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to think really critically about sustainability at a large district scale. So we're talking about restoration of the South Platte when we talk about regeneration of the site. We're talking about energy, and we have great partners at NREL and DOE, existing partners and new ones that are coming to the table to help us do the math on this energy question. And we're thinking about how the entire site becomes an educational opportunity, so you can look at a building and know how it's performing. And with that goal of getting to net zero. So thank you all again for being here. That was kind of a quick overview of all of the things that are happening in this really big multi-year project. So we are happy to entertain as many questions as you have about this now. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for that presentation on that. At this time, we will open up to our Q&A portion. We will have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer some of the questions that I already have in hand. But first, to introduce myself, my name is Ryan Latta. I'm a junior studying soil and crop sciences and applied information technology here at CSU. And after I graduate, which will hopefully be soon, I would like to work for an ag tech company doing marketing or IT help or something that involves people, which I really enjoy. And I'm excited that CSU gets to partner, hopefully, in innovating a lot of technology that will go into the National Western Center. And so now, all right. First questions, we have quite a few of them from the audience, but our first one that we'll start off with is CSU working on a standardized curriculum module that public schools can easily incorporate throughout the school year to complement the National Western Center?
That's a great question, and something we've been thinking a lot about is how do we make it as easy as possible for teachers to bring their students to the National Western Center. And to the extent that we're able to marry up some curriculum that we develop with what the state's guidelines are each year. You know, the vision that President Frank has articulated is that you could have a kid who comes in the first grade that does one thing, that comes in the second grade that does another thing, so there's something for them to do throughout their K-12 experience. As you probably know, the curricula across the state vary because it's a home rule state. So we can't make it super, we can't match it up with each school district's curriculum exactly. But we are making an effort to be sure that we are thinking about what each year in general, what students across the state of Colorado are going to be focused on and learning so that we can make it as easy as possible for teachers to come.
And if I could add, I mean, one of the interesting things about kind of like all things in life, education is changing rapidly too. And one of the things that's very clear if you look at the data is some of the best learning models are shaped around experiential learning. And I think this campus can be a demonstration in and of itself around what experiential learning looks like. Kids retain more knowledge in an experiential learning environment. So how do we work with the state, the Department of Ed, both for K-12 and higher ed collectively to, again, use this place to pilot and try new ways of learning, and not just for the kids, but how do we kind of rejuvenate and get teachers excited about different ways of teaching a broad spectrum of coursework, be it history, be it language arts, be it science, be it math, and use this campus as a way to do that.
Excellent. And then also kind of moving from the classroom education setting to the public education setting, CSU extension services seem to be becoming less popular than they were in the past. Most people are turning online to their help or looking elsewhere other than their local extension services. So how will the National Western Center kind of revitalize that notion that you can get a lot of your information and help from the people who know ag best?
Yeah, that's a great opportunity that the National Western affords us, is to think about how to expand the already great work that our Denver Extension Office is doing, and to provide them with a new location that has additional amenities and ways to get people interested in being there and doing it face to face, right? So it may be possible for you to learn how to keep bees online, but maybe it's not advisable. So having a space where we can teach people how to keep bees and chickens and goats and all the things that are possible in the urban environment, how to build their own hoop houses, these are kind of hands-on things that it's really much better to learn in person. So having a better space for them where they can expand their existing work is something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of moving also to some more logistical questions. We all know that Denver traffic is really great. Really fun, especially during rush hour. And some of the questions that we have collected deal with how will kind of parking situations work and transportation to and from the National Western Center. I know they were on the map, but maybe touch a little bit on those. And also, how will I-70 and I-25 be impacted? Will they make any changes to the size or kind of the on-off ramps to those to make it easier to get to and from this really great event?
Sure, so let me start with I-70. So the state is embarking upon, they just selected their development partner to improve I-70 from Brighton Boulevard out to the east. And so you will see improvements. Ultimately, that bridge structure is going to come down and be replaced. But you know, the state is constantly looking for modifications to our pedestrian or our auto connections. But what's interesting about this site in particular is that there are 4 transit stations that surround this site. 2 just to the east on the A line. This is RTD's commuter rail service. 2 lines just to the east and south. We have the North Metro line. We'll actually have a stop at the National Western Center. It's the first stop out of Denver Union Station. And then the Gold line just to the west with a stop at 41st and Fox. And so it's the second most dense transit corridor to Denver Union Station itself. And so one of the things we're talking about, again, we kind of have this blank canvas to think about what transportation or multimodal transit could look like. And with those 4 stations, we're thinking about a circulator system where you could get off on any one of those stations and then be brought to the National Western Center. We're looking at actually creating this, the center as a transit hub where maybe you don't want to drive into downtown, but you work downtown. You could stop and stay at the National Western Center, pick up your bike, you know, take a shower, do whatever you need to do to get ready. But I think, again, the location is going to avail itself to thinking differently about how we move through the Front Range. And then obviously, you know, and you reference this as the online platforms that are going to start to happen. Our content won't be just limited to the site itself, but I think you'll see a whole bunch of online content where people can stay at home or be at school and get the same information online as well. But we're excited as a city about thinking differently about how we get people out of their cars and expose them to different modes of transportation.
Excellent. Well, that's about all the time we have for questions. If you have any more, please get them to us so we can answer them on our social media. And let's give Ms. Hittle and Mr. Leid one more round of applause.